in the building.
Let's go.
Live with the Wolfhard Roar!
Let's go.
Let's go.
What is good, everybody? Happy Monday morning to all you out there. Welcome to New York Revival, where it's not just sports, it's entertainment. But today, people, we're going to talk sports. And you know what kind of sport in specific? We're going to talk about baseball, New York Mets, what you know about. The vibes are so high right now. Coming off a 3 out of 4 series win against the Philadelphia Phillies. I mean, we couldn't be more pumped. The vibes couldn't be higher. So, you know what? I figured, why not let's talk about the Mets on this Monday morning? Keep the vibes high right before the massive series that comes up against the Atlanta Braves. I want to bring in a guest with me because, you know, I know my Mets, but I want to share, you know, the Mets vibes with somebody that is just incredibly knowledgeable about the New York Mets and has been for a long time. I want to bring in Mike Mayer from Metsmerized. Round of applause, Mike. How we doing, sir? How we doing? Welcome.
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me on.
Hey, thanks for joining me. Mike, I just want to get your vibes right off the bat here. How are you feeling after that massive series win? And what's your thoughts going into Atlanta going forward, man?
Yeah, I mean, you couldn't have imagined the Mets doing much better against the Phillies, right? Going into that series, the Phillies had the best record in the National League, and the Mets take 3 or 4 from them. That's just huge. It takes a lot of the pressure off going into the next series with the Braves, which is obviously it's still huge, but to be able to go into that series with a 2-game lead that's just a massive thing for the team.
Okay, so let's see. All right, right now we're standing at 2 games up over Atlanta, tied with the D-backs. In your opinion, and just let your opinions fly here, do they have enough in the tank to get in? Where do you see this playing out? Where do they end up? Wild card 2, wild card 3? I'd say wild card 1's out the door right now, right? So it's one of those 2 spots, right?
Yeah, I honestly think the Mets, like I said, have put themselves in such a good position. They're tied with the Diamondbacks, but they have the tiebreaker there. 2 over the Braves. So if they take 2 of that series, they'll also have the tiebreaker with the Braves. So I honestly think this is a team that's probably going to get the second wild card. They're just playing. They're the best team in baseball right now. Over the last 101 games, they've been the best team in baseball. So for them to suddenly just kind of shit the bed, I just don't see it happening.
Right.
I know obviously the Braves are good and they have 3 good pitchers going against the Mets in this series, but look, the Mets pitching might not be the bigger names, or they might not all be aces or 1s or 2s, but I mean, they've pitched well. All of them have pitched well in the second half. Their starting pitching's been incredible. Their bullpen's actually been really good recently. Edwin Diaz had just a monstrous effort last night, and he said he's ready to go for Tuesday. So I honestly, if I had to predict it, I think the Mets are going to end up with the second wild card.
Beautiful. It's so weird because, you know, in any other year, that throw by Alvarez hits third base, ricochets into the stands, game over, you know, it all falls apart. But like, you know, Senga, again, the triceps thing, it would have brought down the vibes of the team. But somehow, some way, this team, I buried them about 5 different times during the season, and they keep coming back in that fight. I don't know if it's Mendoza. And I want to get your thoughts on Mendoza here. Like, how much is this on the manager, you know, keeping this group together? How much influence do you think he has? And, you know, does that impact the team so far? Manager of the year?
Yeah, I mean, I think Mendoza's done a great job. I think it's really a mesh of Mendoza and Stearns doing the right things, making the right moves. Look, they're a big reason they're in this position is when a player has struggled, they've moved on. Adrian Hauser struggled in the rotation, moved him to the bullpen, and then cut him, and then brought someone else in. Vientos has been huge, and that's because they decided to move on from Beatty and to give Vientos at bats. They've done that getting Iglesias to the team. They've done it in a ton of different positions where they're not going to wait around for a guy to perform. If
Right.
they're not performing, they're going to replace them.
Yeah.
Whether or they could move them down in the order or give them less playing time. Like Tyrone Taylor has been great lately, so he's getting a little more playing time over Bader because of the way he's performed. Um,
Right.
so I think it's a mesh of both of those guys. Obviously, this is what Mets fans expected, right? When they hired Stearns finally, is that they finally have a competent guy in there that's going to do what's best for the team all the time. And I think that trickles down. I mean, Mendoza has done a great job. He's done everything he could with this team. And last night, I think last night was a really big test for him. I know we were
Yes.
talking about it in our MMO group chat. Like, what is he going to do with the eighth inning coming up and the top
Mm,
of the batting order coming up for the Phillies? And we're like, this is a test because if he brings Diaz in here, he's doing the right stuff. He knows what he's doing. And he
right.
did. That was absolutely 100% the move. And he did it. It worked out. And he brought Diaz back out. And Diaz
Hmm.
struggled a little bit, but he still got it done. And that's Mendoza showing confidence in his best pitcher, his best reliever.
Right. Right. And it kind of felt like he was managing like it was a playoff game, right? Like this whole series, even to the point where he took out Peterson after 4 innings a couple games ago. He brought in Ottavino, didn't work. For me, that means Ottavino. That's the last I want to see of him rest of the way. But that's neither here nor there. But he's managing like he would like, and it's almost like a test for how he's going to manage in the playoffs. And I kind of love that about how he's going about it. And he said Stearns, again, even as recently as bringing up Acuna to take a spot, and now look at the spark that Acuna has given this team. A shot in the arm, the youth. Every decision that he has made just seems like he's gold. It's been gold. It's been gold. And I love to see that about Stearns. It feels like we have the owner, GM, manager, the trio at the top there to feel good about the future for the first time in what feels like forever as a Met fan, man. So it's good. But I want to compare a little bit here. Vibes here. We're big vibes guys on this podcast here. 2015 to this year. Who going into the last week of the season, into the playoffs, where do you rank this team versus the other team in your mind?
It's such a tough one because like a lot of the fond memories I have of when I first started writing and stuff is around that 2015
Mm-hmm.
team. And
Right.
I think I think that rotation is really tough to beat what they had. The Mets rotation right now is good, but I don't think they have the upside of that rotation. So I mean, I think the 2015 team is probably better, but
Yeah.
like you said, this has just been a season of vibes, right? Like
Yeah.
we could go through it all with like Seymour Wiener, the Rally Pimp, um, Grimace. Oh my
Yes.
God! Like, and then you talk about the play at third base last night. Like that just felt like again, I'm not into like just feeling about these things like oh that means destiny or whatever, but that's always a play that goes against the Mets, and it just
Right.
happened not to. So I think when you're playing well and you're playing fundamental, it's just those little things that kind of fall your way sometimes. So there's immaculate vibes around this team. They're not just only good because I mean, good teams are gonna have fun anyway, but it's a fun squad. You can tell that these guys love playing with each other. And
Right.
I mean, you have to put a lot of that again on Mendoza and for Stearns for pushing the right buttons to get the guys in the right spots.
So talking about vibes here, one more time here. Favorite storyline this year? You just listed them all. You got the oh my god Iglesias, you got Grimace, Hawk to a girl. You got you got it all, man. Throwing the glove into the stands. What storyline is your favorite right now going into this year, or ending this year for that matter?
I I think it's really hard to top oh my god with Iglesias just because
Amazing.
we talk about the vibes, which have obviously been great, the song, which is obviously great, but he's also hitting 340. So,
Right.
and leading off
Backing it
now
up.
with Lindor out of the lineup and playing a really good defensive second base or wherever they put him. So, I think that's really tough. But I also think, speaking of Lindor, we have to talk about the team meeting that he called. And that's
Yes.
when I talked about it earlier. They're the best team in baseball since he called that team meeting. And I think that's kind of the moment where he grabbed the reins and decided, look, I'm going to be the captain of the Mets. And
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
um, I think that really is a big shift for this team going not only this year, but going forward, because obviously you're hoping Lindor is going to be that guy for a very long time. So
Hope
I,
so.
I think I think really that's the spark that I point to, or the part of the season I point to.
I liked it. And then listen, if you talk about team meetings, even recently Pete's team meeting, with Stearns and I don't know what was said. I almost get the vibe that it's like, listen, Lindor may or may not be back, but this is on us. And it just like whatever was since that team meeting again, after the Philly series, they've re-clicked and they got back into the mentality that they need to. So whatever these guys are doing, the locker room vibes, this team vibe feels and compared to 2015, it feels even better than that. Like the rotation was better in 2015, maybe overall roster was better, but whatever's going on here is like magic. And like, KC wasn't the better team, in my opinion, in 2015, but they had something going. It was like they were going to get out, they were going to hit the clutch hit, and that's what it feels like is going on with this Mets team. And that's why, I hope that it could lead to something better. But let's
Well,
talk about the guy that, yeah,
to
go
your
ahead. Sorry.
point, to kind of finish on to that point, as we've seen in recent years in Major League Baseball, the team that can squeak into the wild card and are
Mm-hmm.
playing right on hot at the right time can get to the World Series pretty, not, I don't want to say easily, but pretty. It's becoming common that the NL wildcard team or AL wildcard team, either one that's
Yeah.
hot, can make it to the World Series. And
Yeah.
so, like you said, riding those vibes and just playing well, it wouldn't be crazy to think about the Mets winning a series or two.
Right, right. Now I think a lot of that depends on the guy you just mentioned, Lindor. Uh it just the MRI comes back clean, right? Like we're all like, okay, phew, like we dodged something, but the vibes around him, and we talk about vibes again, it just doesn't feel right. He just recently says, if I'm able to play again, I'm gonna have to manage this back pain now. What's your thoughts on the Lindor coming back? Are we going to see 90%? Do you want to rest him for ATL, or do you just send him out there and just hope for the best at this point? What would Mike the doctor do? Trainer.
Yeah, that's a tough spot, but he's been doing some baseball activities the last couple of days. He said he's feeling better, and then the off day today. I think at some point, and I think it's probably the start of the Brave series, you just gotta put him out there and see how
Right.
it's gonna happen. I think that's what you gotta do. And then maybe if it happens the way you want it to, you win that game and you're up, you got a nice lead. Maybe the Diamondbacks lose tonight,
Yeah.
and they lose that night, and you're in a very good spot. Then you can rest them the next day, and then get
Hmm.
them in for the finale. But
Right.
I think you got to test him Tuesday to see what he's going to be able to do.
If it's gonna go, it's gonna go, right? Like whether it's gonna be in the playoffs, I don't know what it is that's gonna go, but like you have to throw him out there at some point and test the waters. I agree with you on that. And so now, if Lindor plays, ideal lineup / infield, like what's your thought process? Who plays second? Who plays third? Who goes to DH? In that scenario?
Well, I think in this scenario, you're going to have to DH Lindor. I think
Yeah.
that's the best way to break him in. And plus, you kind of just have to ride the hot hand of Acuna at short,
Hmm.
and you
Hmm.
also don't want to move Iglesias off second.
Agreed.
So I think, and JD Martinez is struggling badly right now. So I think the easy answer is Tuesday you DH Lindor, and then that kind of see how swinging is going to go for him, because really that's
Right.
where, I mean, is a very good defender at shortstop. So they're okay there defensively. So if you can get Lindor just his bat going as the DH, that would be a huge boost for the Mets.
Huge, huge. I'll take 85% of what he could do and just have him there. Granted, over JD right now, everybody is better. But like, I don't know what did they do with JD? Like, do you just bench him? And in the scenario that works, lefty, if they got a lefty, you put him in. Do you not play him at all? Like, what are your thoughts on JD at this point? 0 for 32. He's got to come around at some point, right? Like, you can't go 0 for the rest of the season.
Yeah, I mean, look, JD is still a professional hitter.
Right.
He's one of the better hitters of the last decade. So I think he's going to come around. But like I talked about with accountability, they've already sat him down against a
Right.
couple of guys, Marte they put in the DH spot the other day. They've been using Winker there too. Um, but yeah, he's the type of guy. He's still going to have a couple of big hits down the stretch.
Yeah.
He's too good of a hitter to not. I think obviously when they face Sale and Freed.
Hmm.
Uh, I think he'll obviously get a DH in at least one of those games, probably two. Again, depending on what's going on with Lindor, because that can change a lot of things
Sure.
depending on how his back is holding up. But yeah, I think JD's the guy that type of guy that's going to figure it out. And that would be a huge boost for the Mets if
Oh,
they could, because their offense. Look, this is a deep offense now with even without Lindor, but with Lindor back in the lineup,
mm,
it's turning out to be a really good lineup. And just having JD back to where he was would be a huge plus.
right. Right. I mean, listen, Alonso's coming around. Viento seems to be coming around. Nimmo coming around. Alvarez coming around. Acuna's doing what he's doing. It just right now, like you almost don't want to. If it's not broke, don't fix it. Lindor, put him back in. And JD, you just feel like he's one of those vets, like you said, that he's going to get the big hit when you need him at the 8th inning of a playoff game or must-win game. And it's good to have that. We're not relying on JD anymore. It's just a good to have that vet right there to have. But let's talk about now pitching real quick. Pivot here, because I don't want to keep you long. And again, people, if you're not following Mike, go on X, follow him at Mike Meyer 22. Great stuff. Great stuff all around. I love your content. Pitching. So I guess we could probably say Manea's been the de facto ace at this point, right?
Yeah.
No, we're not seeing we're not going to get any reinforcements at this point. It seems like if you go with him as the ace, now you got Severino and Peterson. Who do you trust more? Both have been a little rocky lately. And who's your number 2, number 3 in that scenario?
Yeah, I think Severino is probably the guy I would trust the most, just because he's pitched in some big games in his
Yeah.
career with the Yankees, and I think he's just a guy that has a better overall track record than Peterson. I know Peterson had a really good stretch, but he's still a guy that pitches to a lot of contact, and sometimes, especially when you play a team like the Braves, who are
Mm-hmm.
hit quite a few home runs, you can get you into some issues. So
Right.
I think Severino's there too, and I mean this is without talking about Quintana, who's been the
Yeah.
best of that group over the last
True.
5 starts. His five his 5 start stretch right now is one of the best in Mets history, not just
Wow.
right now. So what he's done is incredible. So I mean, I think the Mets have a really deep rotation right now, which is what they're showing. And that just, like you're talking about, it could be options. I mean, Peterson could be the 2, Severino could be the 2, Quintana could be the 2. I mean, all of these guys are pitching like 2s right now, or
Right.
even aces. And that's without talking about Mania, who, I mean, at this point, he's at least in the very back end of the Cy Young conversation.
It's
He's
wild.
he's been a bulldog for the Mets. I mean, no one has in his last 8 starts, he's gone 6 2/3 innings every start. He's the first pitcher to do that in 8 straight starts since Jacob DeGrom in 2019. Just to give you an
Phenomenal.
idea of how good that is.
Phenomenal. I don't know what it is. It is. I don't know if it's the pitching school that the Mets got or whatever. They adjusted. Now him throwing across, seeing him throwing his bullpen across to get the arm angle right. Whatever it is, it's clicking, and I can't wait to see him back because I think that the feeling's mutual here. They want to be. He wants to be back in 2025. The Mets want him back in 2025. It feels like a match made in heaven. And given the uncertainty, I don't know what's going on with Senga. I hope he's just clearing out. He's just one of those years for him, right? Like clear it out, and I hope he's back for the best. But with the uncertainty, you have to bring back. I feel like Manaea, right? It's a given at this point.
Oh yeah, I think that would be one of their number one priorities this offseason.
Right.
Outside of, well, we can talk about it later, but
Yeah.
going after Juan Soto, the big fish of Juan
Oh,
Soto. But from a pitching standpoint, yeah, I mean, he's obviously going to opt out, but
yeah.
then hopefully the Mets will be able to give him a bigger deal and keep him, because it's just worked out. I mean, that
Mm,
just a genius signing by Stearns. I mean, for
fantastic.
the price tag they got him for and what he's done for this team, they would certainly not be in the position they are right now without him. So he's the guy they got to lock up for 2, 3, 4 years once the season's over.
100%. Now we talked about your feelings about this year's team, and you alluded to it a little bit here. What do you do? Was this truly Pete's last homestand as a New York Met? Do you feel like this is a fluid situation in that we got to see what happens, or like what would you do, GM Mike, versus what you think is going to happen?
I go back and forth on this so much because,
Right.
look, Pete Alonso means so much to the Mets organization. He's been here since he was drafted. He's
Mhm.
third in all time in home runs. And it's not just that, too. He's a great leader, like we talked about the meeting he called recently.
Mhm.
He's great for the fan base. He's does a lot of charity work. I mean, he's just not only a good player, but a good person and a
Right.
really good fit for this city and for this team. That being said, he is also a first baseman slash going to be a DH at the end of that contract who has shown some signs of potentially slowing down a little bit offensively.
Yes. Yes.
So I think the Mets would like to have him back, but it would certainly be more of a DH price, I think, is what they
Right.
would like to do. And again, I go back and forth all the time on whether it's going to happen. And maybe a lot of that has to do with what happens with Juan Soto.
Yeah. It feels like everything is leading up to Juan Soto, and I don't know what's going to go on there. I guess I don't know what's going to go on with the Yankees playoff run if that changes his decision. But if you're comparing apples to apples here, you got an owner who's got all the money to spend, a team that looks primed and ready to go. If I'm trying to I'm trying to take the bias out of it here. You're looking one versus the other. Mets look like in a really good spot right now. For a young guy like Soto, he seems like a vibes kind of guy too. Yankees are a little bit corporate, Mets a little bit less, a little have fun. I mean, I don't know. Again, I think I'm being a little biased, but come on, Juan. Come on. Just come to Queens. You want to come here and have a good time, right?
It just feels like to me too that this is the guy that Cohen's been waiting for. Like he's been
Yes.
waiting for the right spot and the right player to go out and spend a lot of money.
All the
Um,
money.
yeah, all the money. It didn't happen with Judge, obviously. Otani had different ideas.
Sure.
So it feels like this is the guy that Cohen is ready to just, hey, here's the Brinks truck, take whatever you want,
Yes.
and just
Yes.
come here and be the best player, one of the best players in baseball for the next 10 years.
And there's nothing, it's something about like a young hitter, like I know the pitchers, I know he tried for Yamamoto, but like Soto is the generational hitter, the young barely in his prime.
Yeah.
Like that's the guy you go and back to Brinks truck. That's why Cohen is here. That's
Yes.
like that's the prototypical reason. Back it up. I agree. So we're on the same page with Soto. Hopefully, is it Burns for you? Do you need another ace? Are you going for an ace, or are you just kind of letting them do their thing on the pitcher's side and see where it shakes out?
Yeah, I mean, they need multiple pitchers. Luckily, a guy like Peterson has stepped up, so you can pencil him in for next year. McGill has made some adjustments, and he looks better, so you can certainly kind of pencil him in as depth at the very least.
Right.
But Senga's a huge question mark. Quintana's going to be a free agent. Severino's going to be a free agent. Manaya's going to opt out. So you, they certainly could use an ace, but they're also going to need about 3 starters.
Right.
So
You gotta add a lot there.
it's a tough thing to juggle, but I also don't think the Mets want to be in the same position as they were last year,
Right.
where they got guys on 1-year deals, which those guys worked out, but I don't think you can really keep that going every offseason. So
Right.
in a perfect world, you'd get a guy like Burns on a 3-4 year deal, and then another starter or two on a couple of 1-2 year deals, and
Absolutely.
then go along with the rest of the depth. Yeah, I mean, yeah, if you get Burns and bring back Manaya, I feel like that's a very good start to the rotation.
Cooking with gas there. Agreed. Okay, being that you are you're great with prospects. What do you do with Marte and McNeil, and with the people that are coming up in Gilbert, Jet, and all these guys? Do you keep Marte and McNeil? Do you just say toodles and give the job to the young guys coming up? And first off, what do you do with Marte and McNeil? Your thoughts next year?
I mean, I think the Mets are in a kind of a position where they have to keep both of them. I don't.
Yeah.
With Marte, no one's touching that contract. Even
Right.
he's been better this year, but he's still been banged up, and he's still a shell of what he has. And with 2 years left on his deal, no one's touching that. So I
That's true.
think that you keep him. McNeil is obviously a more team friendly contract. Um, and I don't think, even though he had a great second half, then he got injured, and there's still the really
Yeah,
bad first half that he had. So I don't think you're going to get a ton of value for him on the market either.
true.
But McNeil is always the guy that's going to provide value, even if he's not the hitter he once was,
Hmm.
because he can play everywhere on the field and he can do it pretty well.
Make him that
So,
super util, right?
well, yeah. So if, say, Acuna is for real and he's your starting second baseman next year, then you still have McNeil who can roam around the outfield
Right.
and can slide in and play second when Acuna is struggling or if he's not
Sure.
there. Um, I just think there's a good chance that both of them are still on the team next year. And maybe that's partly because the guys you mentioned, Jet Williams and Drew Gilbert, have been injured most of the year.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
they haven't been given a chance to really, they haven't played enough games to kind of push themselves onto the roster next year. So
Right.
I do think Williams and Gilbert make their debuts next year, but I think it'll likely be later in the year once some like the injuries always happen, right? So that's why it's always good to have a guy like McNeil for depth.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, listen, it makes sense. You keep McNeil as a super util. All right, I mentioned those three guys though, the infielders. How would you rank them in terms of who you think's going to hit versus who you're not? Jet, Mauricio. We forget about Mauricio because he was the guy last year, and then unfortunate injury happened, and then Acuna. Now he's the guy that they took. He space jammed, Mauricio's powers, and he's taking them now. So, how do you rank them in terms of who do you think is likely to make an impact next year, and who you think is the best talent wise out of those three?
That's a really tough question.
Yeah,
If you had asked me a month ago, it would have been much simpler because
right,
Acuna was struggling in AAA.
right.
Luckily, he made some changes to his swing, and he talked to a mental skills coach too, and kind of
Oh,
tried to take some of the pressure off himself all the time. And the adjustments have clearly helped.
oh,
He's come up and hit for power, which is something he didn't do in AAA this year. I mean, quite frankly, he was not a
amazing.
good offensive player in AAA. Um,
It's
so
crazy.
we got to see how that continues to play out for him. We obviously know he's fast and he's a good defender.
Right.
Um, and then Jet Williams, I think Jet Williams is a similar package to him. And before this year and before the injuries, I think Jet Williams was I think he was definitely the better prospect. But now, I
Yeah.
mean, Acuna played most of the year at AAA. He's got some at bats in the major league. It's been good. So I think just being healthy, I think Acuna probably has more of the important outlook for the Mets next
Mm,
year.
hmm.
And yeah, you mentioned Mauricio. Look, he missed the entire year with a knee injury. Um, he showed some signs of being a good hitter in the major leagues last year, power wise. Overall, he still struggled though as a hitter,
Sure.
and
Sure.
he's also wherever he's going to play is going to be a different position for him because he's
Sure.
mostly been a shortstop coming up. So he's dabbled at third and second and even the outfield. So I think Mauricio is really, it would be nice if he could just be like that really good power hitter off the
Yeah.
bench, um, that plays a bunch of different positions.
Right. Right. I mean, listen, it's a good problem to have. I
Yeah.
guess you let Jet and Mauricio kind of you see their way. Even Gilbert, you got your AAA team's going to be nice and stacked next year, and you
Oh
let
yeah.
them fight it out, see what they do, and then it's a good problem to have down the line. Now, maybe this Vientos to first base thing is real. If you kind of use it against Alonso, and be like, listen, this is our offer, and if that doesn't work, you move Vientos, and now third base opens up. Real quick before we let you go, I Kill Your Vibe has a question. I don't love the name, but we're gonna go with it. The question: what do you think the ceiling is on what Stearns, who typically doesn't hand out huge? He's a smart guy, doesn't a power slugging first baseman. What do you see his ceiling at for what he would offer a Pete Alonso?
That's a good question. I mean, I don't think he's going to end up getting um, Matt Olson money. I just
Yeah,
don't see it just because of the fact that he's likely going to end up in DH and you have seen his offense slow down. So I
right.
think what they would do is probably it'd be more about how it's structured on years. I think is what I would focus on more than the overall money, where they get him for 5 or 6 years, and then there's different options that he can just pick up, or they're by plate appearances. So you're
Right.
making sure he's healthy and stuff. So I think it's going to be an interesting contract no matter who he ends up signing with,
Yeah.
whether it's the Mets or someone else, just because of, like I said, him being a little bit older and likely pushing for the DH. So that's a tough to put a figure on, but I, I
Right.
do I do think year wise it's not going to be like he's not getting 9, 10 years. He's going to
No.
get 5 or 6 years, and then there's going to be some ways that he can build it into more.
And do you see anywhere where the Mets would just maybe just hit him a qualifying offer if they know he's out the door, good as gone? Do they qualify offer him and try and get a draft pick for him at the end of the day, or
Oh
is that
yeah,
kind of a slap in the face to him? I don't know how that
no,
works.
he'll certainly get a qualifying offer. At this point in baseball, that's just kind of a technicality. Just
Right.
like
Right.
just like Mania, I'm sure he'll get one too. Um, they could even thinking about giving it to Severino if they wanted to too. So
True.
I mean, they've got some options there with a qualifying offer. But yeah, they'll definitely give one to Pete, and I think he understands that's just part of the process at this
Right.
point.
Right. All right. Well, listen, Mike. We said it all. We've done it all. I appreciate. I kept you 10 minutes longer than I said I was going to keep you. My bad, buddy. Listen. First off, plug whatever you got going on. Your Twitter, X, whatever. Please do that. Go ahead.
Yep. So like you said, you can follow me at Mike Mayer 22 on X. Just follow along on Metsmerized on all of our content. We've got a bunch of stuff coming out today, a bunch of stuff that's already come out. We're always trying to stay on top of everything that's Mets and trying to be original with everything we've got. And I think we're one of the best sites out there. So check us out.
I second that. Again, appreciate you for coming on. Are you going to the Mets game? Would you go to the playoff game? Have you been? Are you a habitual goer? How does that work? Can I see you at Citi Field if we have a home game going forward?
We'll see. I live about 6.5 hours away, so
It's a
sometimes
tough drive.
it's a tough drive. But I was at the last game in 2015, so
Maybe we'll see
there's
it.
a chance I'll try to make it down for some playoff games.
Love it, sir. All right. Well, listen, thanks again for coming on. Mets fans, make sure you're following Mike and follow him because he's got the best content out there, man. He's the best. Mike, thanks again for for coming on. And let's see you at Citi Field, please. Let's get a home game.
Sounds good.
All right, man. Take it easy.
Have a good one.
All right. Hey, listen. I hope you Mets fans had a good time with that. Mike is as knowledgeable as they come. That was an awesome time. Listen, huge 3 games coming against the Braves here. It doesn't get any bigger than this. The Mets put themselves in position 2 games up going into this series. Might get wild card 3. In my opinion, I think playing the Brewers might be the best option. I think it might be the better option than having to go to San Diego as a wild card 2 to play the freaking Padres, who seem to have our number. I don't want to go to the West Coast. I want to deal with Milwaukee. They seem a little bit, more vulnerable out of the 2. Give me Milwaukee. I think that's our best chance to get a home game at some point down the line because, the playoff format has changed now. Wild card 3 plays the worst division winner in the standings. So that is locked in, going to be Milwaukee. They're going to probably be, settled and ready to go for the last series where the Mets need to win some games. So hopefully they're figuring out their pitching, get a couple wins there. You like to see the Mets shake out at 90 wins. That pretty much locks in a spot. Give me the wild card 3 spot. I'm not going to force it. If you beat the Braves one time, you kind of feel good about their chances getting that wild card 3 spot. And I want Milwaukee. Give me Milwaukee. And I love where the vibes are on this team, man. I love where the vibes are on this team. I know I've said it a million times, but I'll say it a million more. This team is special. Things that are happening that don't typically happen for the Mets. I don't know if Senga's going to come back. I don't know what's going to happen there. I don't know what's going to happen with Lindor. Like, if we get 80% of Lindor, I think that still might be enough. Less than that, oh, man, we'll see. We'll see. But Mets fans, thanks for joining me. We're going to have we have a potential huge baseball guest coming on. keep your ears open, down to the floor. Listen out for who's going to be, because you're not going to want to miss this. Mets fans, Yankee fans, whoever you are, we're going to be talking New York sports all the time here. Shout out to everybody that's in there. The 182. I hope you watched it. If not, go back and watch what we talked about, because Mike is the best. And hey, I'll see you guys tomorrow, because we're going to be talking Mets baseball. Like I said, the biggest game of the season. Must win, in my opinion. Tuesday night, must win, because then you got Sale and Fried, and you do not want to have to win one of those two games. You got to win at least one, and it has to be tomorrow for the New York Mets. Let's get it. Let's get into the playoffs. Because, man, I mean, the videos that are coming out from Citi Field, like the vibes, and it's everybody wants in on this. Everybody wants in. Like, don't blow us. Don't blow us, Mets. Give us this, please. Listen, shout out to all you guys. 188 in here. We love you. We'll see you Tuesday. Let's go, Mets.
New York Revival, I'm in the building.
Let's go.
Live with the Woodward Roll!
Let's go.